Hello, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Maria from One of Nine on YouTube, and I'm a mum to 5 lovely children and wife of Peter. And I started my mummy journeying as a single mum. I'm just really looking forward to chatting with you. Thanks so much for coming and joining me today about how you've raised a pro-life family. So would you just all go around and just introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name's Sarah. I'm a mum of 8 and we're expecting baby number 9 later this year. Got children ranging from ages 3 to 17, so quite a wide variety of experience.
Hiya, I'm Ruth and I work for CBR UK and I'm a mum of 1. I've got a 16-year-old daughter called Rihanna and I'm a single mother. It's great to be here today.
Thanks, Ruth.
Hi, thanks for inviting me here. I'm Arun. I'm a dad of 3. My oldest is 7 and my youngest is nearly 2. And we have been raising them in a very pro-life manner, teaching them a lot about pro-life and the importance of life from their very young age. And we'll talk about that very soon.
Thanks, Arun.
I'm Mark, married to Louise since 1995. I've got 5 children.
What age are your children, Mark?
The oldest is, you put me on the spot now. William is 24.
Don't worry, I won't ask you about this.
He's 8, so 24 to 8.
And what was your first, what sparked you on your pro-life journey yourself?
Well, I was quite young, probably about 12, and I think a group from our church went to a SPUC talk or a rally or something like that. And it was a formative sort of eye-opening moment. I think, I don't know whether I'd formed much of an opinion up until that point, but I remember the presentation was absolutely blew me away. The concepts that were put across, really made me open my eyes. And there was a gang of pro-choicers sort of broke in halfway through and started throwing around insults. And that was, I can remember thinking, this is really quite sort of intimidating, so.
So was there anything in that really stuck out to you? Was there something that you hadn't realised before that you suddenly realised?
I think it was the concept of life from conception, and the essential nature of the fact that that is a human person, and how important with fundamental dignity, from that very early stage.
And that's interesting to hear, because a 12-year-old boy, you might not expect to be so blown away by something like that. You might just think, it just sort of go over your head, but that did make an impact.
Absolutely, yeah. I can really remember thinking it was something, important that you could really get your teeth into, sort of, it's a fact that you can really sort of hang on to. And it's consonant with what we believe as Christians, I think, as well. It really works well with that. So, because it's such a demonstrable sort of reality, it really is something that you can hang on to and make sense, when combined with your faith.
Yeah. Had you been brought up in the faith or in the pro-life movement at all?
Not in the pro-life movement at all, no, but we were a Catholic family, so.
In faith. Because I remember when I was growing up, we would be sort of dragged around to pro-life rallies, and that would be quite commonplace in my family. It's a Saturday morning, we're going to go and stand outside and hold up some posters. And to be honest, it didn't really bother me. I was pro-life. I didn't realise, and I suppose that was the beginnings of setting the foundations. But it wasn't something that I know sometimes people wonder, is that traumatising for children? And that wasn't for me or any of my brothers. I'm one of 9, so not for any of my brothers and sisters. I don't think it, upset or anything. But my parents were keen to be pro-life and to stand out and to be a witness. And we sort of came as a package in that. And I'm grateful now that they did, because I was able just to be drip-fed in, really, I suppose. And it wasn't like a big, shock or anything. Would anyone else like to share their first experience of being pro-life, something that struck out for you?
Yeah, for me, I knew nothing about a pro-life movement. I grew up in not a Catholic, but a other denomination Christian home. So I knew that, I picked up from my parents that abortion was wrong, but I didn't know the extent it was happening, or it was never really spoken about in my church. I never heard it spoken about. And then when I did something with a Christian concern called the Wilberforce Academy, And that's where I saw abortion for the first time, going back about 8 years now. And when I saw abortion in a video, it just, it broke my heart. And I knew after seeing it, I couldn't just go on about my life, knowing that this was going on and the extent to which it was going on. So yeah, seeing it really caused me to be active, and then I found out about there's a whole pro-life movement happening and got connected to CBR UK quite quickly. So yeah, it was the images that sparked it for me.
Sarah, would you like to share?
Yeah, well, I think I was probably sort of loosely pro-life from teenage years. At school, I went to a Catholic school, and I remember in RE when we were about 15 or 16, one of the nuns got permission from all our parents to show the Silent Scream film, which shows an abortion through an ultrasound. And that was obviously quite a powerful introduction to the pro-life movement. But I don't think nothing really came of it for me. It probably just was the seedbed that I knew it was the abortion was wrong. But later on, I got involved with a life group at church and was helping fundraise for them. Again, it wasn't very real. Abortion was something happening over there, and we were making cakes and raising money to stop it, but not in a very real way. I think it was when we lost one of our children in a miscarriage, seeing that child at 14 weeks and holding that child was probably the real sort of pinnacle for me, where I realised this is really, really a human being, and became very passionately driven then to get involved much, much more. And I think, gosh, all the people that haven't actually seen that, and bless them that they don't need that. But for me, it really was the big trigger, that real sort of visual, well, the life in my hand. So it took a big punch for me.
And Aaron, what sparked it for you, or was it something drip-fed over time?
All the time, probably in the last few years, because I always grew up in a very strict Catholic family, but I grew up in India, where speaking about abortion or speaking about birth and pregnancy is kind of taboo still, maybe until you get married. And I was a part of a youth movement called Jesus Youth all during my late teens and up to my 30s. However, we never spoke about this openly. I've been for rallies, for pro-life rallies back in India, wearing the t-shirts and shouting pro-life, but never thought about what's really happening behind it. And once I started coming for this pro-life, 40 Days for Life, standing in front of the clinics, holding the banner, Yes to Life. And that's when I started reading about it and knowing about the statistics. I was really shocked what's going behind the scene. But it really struck me only the last couple of years when I myself, when we were expecting the third baby, and my first two kids are boys, and for some reason we automatically thought my third one is also a boy, and we are mentally prepared for this. And when I was sitting at the 20-week scan, I was speaking to my wife, said, look, it's a boy, we are all set with all the clothes and things like that. And suddenly we got back with the news, now it's a girl. And I sat there thinking, gosh, what am I going to do? It's a girl, and we are expecting a boy. And it took a few months for me to get over this shock. It's not because I was thinking that girls are bad, but I was thinking, no, it was a boy. It was meant to be a boy. I ruled out the 50% chance. But later, when that girl came into my life, and as we always say, daddy's girl concept grew into me, and I realized how lovely it is. And that's when I started thinking, what if a person who did not have that upbringing, who did not have that concept of faith, who does not understand the value of their life, was in my place, and if they decided not to go with that yes to the girl, and to decide to terminate that baby then and there, it's a big loss. Not just for them, the loss of their life, but the joy that I get from my little girl today, I just can't measure it. I can't explain it, and I'm so thankful to Lord for what God has given to me. But that's my experience, and that's when I really start thinking, and I really start taking pro-life seriously.
And I think all these stories highlight the importance of laying foundations for our children, hence why we're all here today, and how we want to do that for our children. And again, for me, when I had my first pregnancy, my sweet daughter Lani, 14 years ago, I was 20 years old, I just finished my first year of uni, and I discovered I was pregnant. And what a shock, and really, really fighting with myself, thinking, I am a mum. And I knew that's what I always held on to. I know I'm a mum right now. So no matter what happens, I'm a mum. And I was always brought up pro-life, so it wasn't something that I considered. But in all honesty, it was really tough to accept it. And so like you, thinking about if somebody else was in that position without the foundations, how essential it is to have those foundations. Then years later, my daughter was about 3, and I thought, I'd been out of like the pro-life scene for a while, I suppose, like then you're sort of taking it on yourself, it comes to that point. And then I thought, I want to bring her to something, and there was a walk in London, people holding white crosses and sort of doing a march around in remembrance of children that were lost through abortion. And we went there, and I didn't really say anything to her, I didn't think about it in advance. I'm a young mum, and I always sort of think I sort of just floated through and didn't necessarily plan anything ahead. We got there, and she said, "Why are we here?" So just on the spot, I'm sure I was inspired by something divine. We are thinking about all the babies who were lost before they were born, and just bringing up that awareness with her.
Slide left.
That we are a person before we're born, and that we are loved before we're born, and the humanity of life before birth. And so how have we started to, any of us, started to bring our children into laying the foundations?
Gosh, I think for me we've been very lucky that we've had many children. So for each children that's come before, they've seen me experiencing pregnancy and almost an instant change in me that something's happening. Mummy's not very well. It's takes over family life for a few weeks while I'm sick, and we've inevitably had to tell them quite soon I'm pregnant, like way before scans, because I'm so sick, or because it's making such an impact. So they know something really big's happening in our family, and I think they're very aware then of the changes in me, and they've obviously seen movements in my tummy and things like that, and they know full well that there's a person there, there's a human life, there's something in Mummy's tummy. So we've sort of from our second baby, I suppose, when we've said night prayers with the little ones, we've always said pray for the baby in Mummy's tummy from as soon as we know, really, so that they're a person in our family straight away. They're a member of us. They have, so the children.
So having the emphasis on being pro-life rather than, because some parents
not
worry
about
rather
than being anti-abortion.
When do I need to tell
no,
my
it's
children?
much more building the culture of life, I think, isn't it? That's sort of our. It's not all doom and gloom. We're not talking about abortion all the time. It's been completely the opposite with us. That we've really emphasised life and treasuring life from conception, and they've seen it. I suppose the other side as well is when we've miscarried, they can see us grieve for a treasured life. So it's recognising the humanity, and I think we've just been lucky that for us, not everyone's got lots and lots of children, but that for us has been the best way of teaching them without us even needing to vocalise anything, really.
And then when, because you've got children up to, who's your oldest?
17.
17. Mark, who's your oldest? 24. And
16.
And Ruth, you've got a 16-year-old, and I've got a 14-year-old oldest. And Aaron, you
7.
Introducing any of these concepts concretely. We're laying these foundations. This is like drip fed into maybe our families. But then when will they need to face something? What have you experienced with your children? Anything that's worked?
I think it's funny, teaching as a catechist, I've come up against this really more than, because exactly as Sarah said, I found that in your family environment, it's more about love and life. And if the children see you loving like their siblings and each other, and then they recognise the dignity and the importance of those relationships. And I think they grow up with that sense of the importance of everyone. Everyone is important. everyone's equally important. But sort of as a, like in my role as a catechist, if you like, I've found that a lot of children who sort of, they will ask questions, or they'll have different concepts of what's priorities, really, we'll do sort of moral games sometimes with some of the kids who come in about being put in a difficult situation and what choices they would make.
What age children are you working with?
14,
yeah.
I'd say. So, and you tend to get 90%, in a difficult situation would choose, I think abortion is licit. And I think that is probably because it's, whether we recognise it or not, even if we're bringing our children up as Catholic, it is being, as pro-life, it's being drip-fed through the culture, that it's just a normal part of healthcare, you hear all this sort of language, don't you? And that's very much the way that, even if you think that they're not hearing these things, they are through the news and stuff like that. So I think a really good way to do it is to sort of have those more broader discussions about what a child is, what pregnancy is, and bring it in that sort of way, rather than, because I think when a child hears, when they figure out what abortion is, my experience is they're horrified. It's not something you want to confront. That like when they get a bit older, perhaps they might ask you, "Hang on a minute, what is this thing? Someone said it was this," and then they bring it to you, and you have to sort of talk them through it. And at that point, they can hardly believe that this is something that actually goes on.
I think you're right there, Mark. Like, it is within our families, and just to keep discerning with each child and with each situation. There might be a vigil that we could attend, or whatever it might be, an event, a spark pro-life thing, and just discern, is this the right time for this child to go and listen to whatever it might be or get involved? And I felt like organically it's worked with my first, because it's the first that sort of leads the way, isn't it? And just introducing her, and it's never been any hate speech or anything, because I know what it's like being in a surprise pregnancy, I prefer to call them. And I know, well, just from my own experience, the challenges, and so loving others, but just acknowledging that there is a lack of knowledge that there is life in that womb. So then that maybe was like the next step for us. We're praying for those people who don't know that there's a baby there. We want them to know, and we want to stand out and
it's amazing in a
work
culture that's so preoccupied with equality that the unborn don't have any equality. That they're second-rate citizens, and that they're the good for them doesn't seem to even come into the equation a lot of the time.
And this what seems to be like quite, this is just what we do. Actually, being intentional about it drip feeding in, because the culture is drip feeding it the other way. And your children were all in mainstream schooling.
Yes,
Yeah.
Any challenges you've had that have popped up, surprises that maybe you either were prepared for or you weren't prepared for, and you had to sort of maybe deal with the after consequences?
Well, I had a situation where my second son Mike went to an all-girls school, and it was a Catholic school for sixth form. And when he was in there, one day they had a discussion on abortion, and he came out as pro-life in the discussion, and he was the only one in the class. And basically, we got called into the school because he was by the head teacher, because he was an extremist apparently, and because he was pro-life. And
did you have the confidence to stand up and keep it stand his ground?
You've met Mike, yeah. He had the confidence. Don't worry about that. He certainly did have the confidence to do that, thank God. But I think I was so shocked. You can imagine I absolutely read the Riot Act. I couldn't believe that there was space for this sort of, that it was sort of a reasonable position even to take.
It takes a certain character to be able to stand up as well, and the children that we're putting into the school system. And earlier these things are being introduced, from the schools or from the wider culture, and not from us. And so being prepared for these little things, and maybe, can we, or do we even want them to be completely sheltered from the culture? No, there's got to be, at some point they've got to start entering into it, but not being shocked.
Yes,
being prepared, getting the right balance.
It's very tricky because invariably we've found that they're the only person in their class often who, especially I found with my boys even worse, because the girls in the class have been quite we're quite feminist, and they'll say you haven't even a right to that opinion. So the boys get quashed like, you're a man, you shouldn't even be talking about this, it's a girl's issue, it's a female issue. But yeah, I think it's the loneliness that you can't prepare them for that. They could well end up being the only person who's pro-life. But I think we've found, or I know my children have found a lot of help on YouTube. They've learnt their apologetics from some of the quite famous pro-lifers like Ben Shapiro and things like that. Just off their own back. It's not not come from me, but they've told each other, and obviously from watching March for Life and all of that from Eden Linton, and they've picked up. There are really obvious things you can say to get yourself out of the hole and to not be trapped in the argument, and win the argument. But yeah.
And it takes for some of us to have that seed, like you're saying, Eden Linton, Ben Shapiro, Ruth. You felt that to step out and do something big. Those people help other of us that maybe to empower us, to give us confidence.
Ruth has empowered my children. My sons have seen you at the March for Life and stuff like that, and listened to your, some of the videos you've done, and they've really thought it was just amazing. But I think it's an argument. It's such an easy argument to win. It's very difficult. Yeah. The pro-life argument makes sense, doesn't it?
I was going to say, I think as parents, it's important that we remember that actually it's the other people that are being brainwashed. Like when a child is, you tell a child this is a baby, babies are being killed, and they're just naturally outraged by it. The fact that so many adults and other teenagers are, as in the majority in the schools, is simply because they've been brainwashed by the media, by probably their parents, by the government. Everything else is saying it's a choice, it's a choice, it's a choice, it's a choice, it's a choice. So by us telling them, the truth, both sides, and I think it's important that it is both sides. That yes, humanity, the beauty of life, the beauty of the blessing of children and big families. If God so blesses you with that. But also, this is a injustice, a tragedy that is happening in our nation, and babies are, being killed. And I think they do kind of pick that up. I mean, for me, because I've only got one child, as you can imagine, she's quite mature around a lot of adult company and stuff. And I think they do pick up when we're talking, about all sorts of things. Even when we're talking with adult friends, with other pro-lifers, they pick it up. And I can't remember when I first told her about it. She was probably around 9, and as you know, we use images, we do use graphic images, and I think she might have seen some lying around or something. But so that seed was always planted in her that this is a terrible thing. So when it comes, like your children, to RS, religious studies, where they're talking about abortion, and yeah, she's one of very few that are speaking out on it. I think there is a strength because they just know it's wrong, and that anything else now that comes and says otherwise, I don't think it can really, I think it's very hard for them to change away from that. It would take something tragic and massive for them to shift out of that.
Yeah. So you've formed really good foundations, because even when you got pregnant, maybe you weren't so pro-life. I was, and it still was so tough thinking, what do I do? Obviously, I can't. There's only one way. There's only one thing to do, but accepting that and to having that solid foundation, and then I think that's an example as well, isn't it? To show. I mean, certainly as single mums, we had been to say, it can be a tough situation. I'm not saying mine's the toughest thing either, but it was tough at the time, and I carried on uni, and I had her in my Easter holiday of my second year actually, and then went back 3 weeks later and just carried on. But I think showing them that it is possible. I remember back in school as well, it's interesting what you're saying, like as men can be marginalised, and the boys as well, you don't know, how you ever know. And that was quite a big argument, wasn't it? Well, we don't know, do we? Because if we've not been in the situation, then you don't know. And
This
so,
will never affect you.
Your life is
Yeah.
perfect, right?
yeah, because this won't come about for you, and so you can't really, no one can really argue, can you? Because we don't know what it's like, but just knowing the truth and knowing what's right or not. So is there another thing I wanted to highlight as well is the things to look out for. A friend of mine was saying about her son, 6-year-old, had found, or he'd been given a magazine from his nanny, having a look through, and there's a list of top 20 women who have changed the world. And he came down on that list and was asking questions, and this child really took it to heart. And I think that these little things, it is drip fed through to look out for. That, yes, they did change the world, but in what way? And when we want to have our children to be exposed to these things. So finding their own identity in the pro-life movement. So it's one thing, having these foundations. For me, I wasn't so active personally until I had a child. Is there a way that you've been able to get your teenagers involved in becoming more a part of it and finding their identity in the pro-life movement?
I think the March for Life has been an absolute blessing for that. It really has sort of made it real for them, and they've met so many other like-minded teenagers and friends. I mean, they love it. They can't wait to go. So yeah, that's been for us a massive blessing. I'm trying to think.
So it's attractive. It's not.
It's
like
attractive. Yeah, it's vibrant. It's happy. It's joyful. It's not like, I mean, they've seen the other side protesting, like counter-protesting, and it's hostile. It's edgy. It's angry. It's kind of gnarly. It completely puts them off.
war zone, isn't it?
Yeah, they're instantly repelled by it. Whereas we're sort of singing and happy faces, and
We are marching for life.
Literally marching for life.
And isn't it interesting the media portrays it the other way, right?
Yeah.
the pro-lifers,
How
the
aggressive.
anti-choicers are the aggressive ones, and that's what the mainstream people are seeing and drinking and believing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're twisting all these women's arms to have babies that they don't want to have, and
And Ruth, you weren't initially sort of had this big pro-life spark in your heart, as it were, when you were bringing up your daughter. But then when you did, how did you start getting her involved, or did you want to? Did you look back and think maybe I could have done it from earlier on?
I think because she was quite young, she was around 9, and the nature of our work is holding graphic abortion images.
It's a big
I
awakening
think at the
for her.
beginning I kind of regret, I was saying to you earlier, I've kept my kind of pro-life work and my daughter activism quite separate, because it's like, this is me going out to do my work, and whether I'm speaking somewhere, wherever it wasn't always appropriate for her as a young child. But on reflection, I do wish maybe I had taken her out a little bit more, come to different things. So I would recommend that to other parents, just to get them involved, because it's harder once they hit, 16, that teenage years, to really, want to come out. But yeah, I would encourage others to do that. I mean, it's always been something we've prayed about at home, and it's just knowledge and known, and and it can be part of daily life, speaking up when it comes up. But in terms of activism, I haven't involved, whereas other members of the team maybe have come out with their babies and things like that. On reflection, maybe I could have got her more involved.
And Aaron, you've got young children, and
very
you're already bringing them out to, at some extent. Would you share it
we
with
have
us?
been bringing them to vigils, but probably we might have taken an unconventional approach. We've been going straight to the point, that what's happening there in these clinics and surgeries. We've not been beating around the bush. We've been telling them that these parents or these moms and dads to be are going there because they don't want their babies. It's a tough concept for kids of that age to take in, and my oldest, who is 7 now, my wife has been taking him to the vigils from the age of 4.
And what is it they do at the vigils?
They just sit there, and when my oldest was 4, my second one was 3 years old, and in the pushchair. And they do the rosary right in front of them, holding the little banner. And it's a tough concept to get into them, but this is the way sometimes that I have explained to it. Let's say when we are walking from Tesco's and there sits a Labrador with a little banner saying that save me, and I explained to my little son at that time, if a dog is important and if a dog has to be saved, how much more important is a little baby to be saved? And when we read in the Bible, when we say that God has chosen each one of you and called you by name, and it's only God who can take life and give life. And if a dog is important, why not a baby? And probably, I'm not sure how much he has taken the story about a man drinking a glass of water with a goldfish in it in the bar, and who got arrested because the goldfish was killed, and also explained, if a little goldfish can be killed and if he can get arrested, how can all these mums and dads kill their babies and it's acceptable? So the world might teach you that it's okay because you cannot see that baby, you can hold that baby in hand, but that baby is growing inside all their mummy's tummies. So a baby cannot be killed. And we have been straight to the point. And I'm not sure how, still I don't know how much they have taken this concept of let the baby grow up to 9 months or 10 months, but we have been constantly praying about this. So every day when we do our family prayers, a 4th decade in the rosary is always dedicated for pro-life. And we let our children say their intentions. So my oldest is 7 now, second one is 6. And they pray for the doctors working there or attenders working there, and they say, okay, let them, God help them to find another job. Lord, change the mind of these parents who are walking there. Or they even say prayers like, let that lady who shouted at us last week while we were praying there in the vigil, Lord, help her to be healed and forgive her. So, and visible signs when they go to school, on their coat jackets we have, I think 11 weeks old babies' feet.
The little feet.
Yeah, little feet. We actively make sure that they always wear it, just in case somebody asks a question, they can tell what they know about it. And we also downloaded an app called Army for Life. And this is a concept that was introduced by Fulton G. Sheen about spiritually adopting babies, starting from the conception up to 9 months. So kids can name their babies in the app. They can call them Peter and Nancy or whatever, and pray for those babies. There's a little prayer, and they pray that every day, without even knowing where this baby is, who this baby is, but God knows who that baby is, for 9 months, and pray that that mother, that father would not take a decision to abort that baby. So this is the way we're trying to keep that concept in their mind, but as I said earlier, there was no beating around the bush. We straight away, from the beginning, we have been making very clear these babies have to be saved and they cannot die.
And have they been asking questions or anything you think, oh, maybe they're getting a bit upset by this?
They are upset about this. Especially my second one, he is very vocal. They're upset about it, and he keeps asking, like, how can these daddies and mummies take a decision of killing their babies? And it's like, probably they don't know about it, because God tells that babies are, it's His choice, life and death is His choice, but these people are being given wrong ideas that people can take the life of these babies before they're born. So they're very upset about it, they're vocal about it, and I think when there's so much push from the world in the media about it's okay to kill the baby, it's okay to have the choice of killing or let the baby live, I think they should be strong enough in their mind, in their faith, to come out in public and to say that, no, it is not okay. They are alive, and they need to grow, and they have the right to live. And just to be like you and me, there's so many people who in this world are famous and who have done so many great things. It could be one of them who's dying there. And I think I personally feel that we have done the right thing in our family to make it very clear to them what's happening, and they're upset about it when they get to know what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. I was going to add, if that's all right, I was going to say, and I think the fact that, they know about, that there are parents and doctors who are killing babies, it kind of, especially the older they get, it kind of opens up to the good news, right, that there is forgiveness in Jesus Christ. And So yeah, I think we just have to raise our children in a way that, yes, you know, mummy's got friends who have had abortions, you know, especially the pro-life movement is where you're going to find most women that are happy to speak about it because they know the love and the forgiveness of Jesus that is mainly there. And so, yeah, I think we're able to do both, and it just gives kind of a full roundness of all humans are made in the image of God, yet people have fallen short because of lack of knowledge. But yeah, there's the good news of Jesus, which
Absolutely.
sets people free.
Absolutely. We always make a point that we all also pray for the people or the moms and dads who decided to abort their babies. We also pray for them during our rosary, and we ask Lord to forgive them, Lord to heal them. And sometimes they walk through that path and take the wrong decision, but they can still walk through that path again and take the wrong decision again. So we pray that, okay, all those mothers, all those parents who took the wrong decision, let them be healed, let them be forgiven. So we try to make sure that kids don't get that idea that, okay, we should protest against this, we should be absolutely against this in our exhibitions where, like when we go for vigil. But one thing that we always tell my boys is, when you're about to do something, let that be pro-life or anything, WWJD, what would Jesus do? Would Jesus go to the vigil and shout and scream there? No, he wouldn't. He would be the calmest person around there. So whenever you do something, think what Jesus would do. And so you can raise your opinion, you can how you're saying this, you need to protest this in a calm, peaceful manner, but don't be a judge there. Stand there and do your prayers, and let your prayers do the wonders, and God will do the rest. Because I personally think that's very important that while we educate them, we also make sure that they are not anti to these people who are committing this sin, but they're anti to the sin.
Yeah, compassionate to everyone. Absolutely. And so there's different ways that we can get our families involved. We're building the foundations at home, through our faith, through our prayers, through our, just conversations, having babies, seeing other families that are having babies, talk about those babies and, they're pregnant and what can we do and how can we help them. And also then online.
Yeah.
Through the media, Ben Shapiro, whoever the kids are going to get involved in, and maybe helping them. If we've got teenagers at home, we know that stage of teenage life where they just have got this amazing ability to argue with everything. Yeah. So what I'm saying to my daughter a lot at the moment is, you're so great at arguing. Wouldn't it be great if we could just really funnel that, instead of arguing back at me, I can give you someone else to argue with, and let's just sort of arm you up and let's go a different direction on a good day, and on a bad day I won't share, but that's it, isn't it? Like, how can we arm them? And they are at this great stage when they're teenagers, and it is difficult because they can get sucked into that culture. As much as it's obvious that the pro-life argument is right, it's really tricky then. Yeah. They've gone halfway in the world, all their friends are doing this life thing, and then they have to stand back and say, actually no, I'm going to stand up in my RE class and say, or sit back and say, I can't agree with this. So online, and March for Life, like there's so many attractive events, isn't there? Yeah. The vigil, going to the vigil and just being willing to stand there, and maybe like a variety of things as well. I know my children have been to a variety of things now, and again I sort of say, like, I haven't sort of massively thought about it in advance, but I was brought up in a pro-life sort of circles, and so I feel like I've just fallen into it. But it is so important for us to be intentional and protect our children, especially if we're sending them out, aren't we, into the mainstream, and not only for them, but for the people that they have an impact on as well.
I think it's essential to give them the tools, to be able to equip them to have those discussions. So they're going to hear these ideas. You can't hide them away from them, and it's really important to exposing them to things. Like I was saying, like some of the things that you've done, have been really. We've sat down as a family and listened to it, and I really do believe that this is a great way as well to keep the kids in the faith, because they recognise that this is part of this is like a central thing, isn't it? The pro-life movement, and it integrates so well in philosophical terms and everything. The arguments stack up really, really well. it's a really good one to sort of get them involved in that, in having a debate and, you know, being able to argue, and then they can see that it all makes sense.
And then they can maybe take a step forwards. Go on, Sarah.
I'd say teaching them the history of this struggle as well, though. When I was about early 20s, I remember hearing about the Abortion Act. Maybe it was at law school, I'm not sure. And it hadn't dawned on me that abortion had never been, had previously been illegal. That hadn't dawned on me because I'd grown up, I was born after the Abortion Act. So as far as I was concerned, it had always been a possibility. I hadn't realised that, you know, at some point it was made legal and it was previously not legal. So I think for our children's generation now, it must be that plus, because it's been so many years now that it's been normal, and in our culture, I mean, in our health service, it's a completely normal thing, and it must have affected the culture, I'm sure, as well. But just so getting that message across that it wasn't always like this, I suppose similar to sort of slavery, that these things can be overturned. It doesn't have to be like this, that we can change. I think that's an important message.
And I think that's why it's helpful to teach them, you know, other injustices in history, how they've been overcome, and how, you know, it takes people who are actually the status quo have always supported these injustices. It's always people who have been willing to stand against, you know, the natural flow, speak out, which is not the status quo, that have changed the world. And just, I think within this movement, I think it encourages and empowers them, whatever it is in life, that they're going to have to stand up and actually, you know, I'm not going to go with the mainstream opinion if it's wrong. I'm going to stand by truth. I'm going to stand by what's right. And
you might be the only one as well, but from from single people, massive changes can happen.
Exactly.
It just takes someone to start.
That's really empowering, like looking back in history and seeing those
Definitely.
individuals who just stood out, and they can feel like that, they can put themselves in that place.
And that's the thing, because the world will clap them, but then the world will now be going ahead with the mainstream and doing the same to what is now the biggest victim group, as we know, is the unborn child. So I think it's really empowering to our children to be able to show them that and encourage them.
Yeah, encourage them, getting to ask questions, really question it, and you know, why is it wrong, and looking at the roots, even in the history, the roots of where abortion came from.
And framing it as a civil rights issue. It's not just. I think we get a bad press that we're just these mean Christians who are against everything. But no, it's the civil rights issue for these people. It really is.
More pro-life, and how surprising it is being a single mum, not expecting, knowing anything. I mean, even like you were saying, Aaron, as well, with the surprise of whatever it was in the pregnancy, and then afterwards, you know, giving these women hope and seeing the stories shared at March for Life, online, at different events that we might go to, of people who have had a surprising pregnancy, that weren't an unplanned pregnancy, they weren't expecting, it was absolutely huge challenge, and then the light at the end of the tunnel is incredible. I mean, even just having children, you know, in our, like, the first child that anyone's had, people can relate to, how, even the planned one, how incredible it is and mind-blowing when you have that child. And that, when you have any child, and hearing these stories from the other charities that support women who are in these struggle pregnancies.
There's a real culture of, I want to live my life now before I have a child. And people don't seem to realise that having children is your life.
That's your life.
Just a bit of the life. So,
and holding out, and then realising, why did we hold out?
And then it's all gone.
And these are important fundamentals. I think that when you become pro-life, it just a whole thing's opened up. It's like, actually, no, the children are a blessing, you know. And in my daughter, I think being an only child as well, and in the pro-life movement, you know, more people with big families, and I've got a good friend who has 8 kids, and she's now decided that she wants to have 8 kids. And it's just like, I think it's just, you just see the beauty of life as well, and the blessing it is. So.
Thank you so much for talking today. It's a lot to ponder on, and thank you for watching. If you've got any ideas of how you're raising the next generation of pro-lifers, if you've got any more ideas, then please comment on the YouTube or Vimeo or Facebook, and share more with us. Thank you.